Father, here's a question. This is an anonymous in Texas, and they ask this via email. Father, with regard to a child preparing for confirmation, how much depends on that child's knowledge versus what the actual sacrament can or does confer, regardless of the child's memorized knowledge? Since we have seen a change in when the child can or should receive the sacrament of confirmation, what has been the church's basis for this change? Can each diocese vary on the age of reception?
Well, the sacrament of confirmation confers grace in and of itself. It's called ex operato. When the sacrament is given, the grace is given. It's not dependent on the priest's holiness or state of grace, although we want holy priests and we want them ministering in a state of grace always. But the sacrament conferred properly, a valid sacrament, confers the grace in and of itself. Our disposition to receive that grace does affect how much we actually benefit from the grace that's given. So I'd say the child's preparation, if it's negligent, if the child doesn't apply himself, doesn't care, then he's not putting his soul in a proper disposition and not getting off on a great foot as a soldier of Christ, which is, when we're confirmed, we become adults in the faith and soldiers for Christ. Is something that should be taken seriously, and it's a great grace. The gifts of the Holy Spirit are, enlivened in us, and so that's also a part of what would be affected by the child. Book knowledge is good, but this disposition of the heart is more important. Regarding the age of reception, I've seen various bishops have different policies. It used to be that communion and baptism, communion, and confirmation, I think, were all given simultaneously. Various changes over the centuries about how that was handled, but I think at the moment confirmation can vary, when it's given.
The extraordinary form's doing something funny. I'm noticing younger and younger confirmations. So it seems like they're all still separate. Baptism and communion are still separate. And I think those are obviously the closest. Baptism at birth, first communion around 5 or 6. It usually is how it happens. But I'm seeing confirmations now in the extraordinary form, at least here in Denver. Those seem to be happening around like 9 or something like that. So I think that there is a lot of dioceses I'm noticing that are varying. Like when I was confirmed here in Colorado, I was a freshman in high school, right? So I was probably 13 or 14. But of course, now that I'm going to Latin Mass, like those kids are obviously even before middle school. And I have Byzantine friends. So it's kind of cool to see like the history of the church that way.